Virtual summits are the most powerful online marketing tool available to grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. If you are ready to take your summit to the next level, then tune into the Virtual Summit Podcast with Dr. Mark T. Wade.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software and creator of the One Day Summit Formula. And I'm on a mission to help you, the summit host, get your summit out to the world in a powerful and impactful way. So let's get started. Hey, Summit hosts, Dr. Mark T. Wade here, founder of Virtual Summit Software and your host here on the Virtual Summit Podcast. All right, well, I am excited about this. We are going to start a 3-part Summit Talks debrief. So our annual mega summit, Summit Talks Summit, was just wrapped up a few weeks back. Well, at this point, maybe about almost 3 weeks ago now. And I wanted to come here and break it all apart, give you a debrief on what we did, how it went down, what worked, what didn't work, what we learned, and everything in between. I did this debrief with our speakers, and they said it was one of the most valuable aspects of being a part of the Summit Talks Summit was actually hearing from the inside all the things that worked, all the things that went well, and all the things that didn't go well and didn't work so that they could implement those into their summit. So I thought, why not bring this out to the entire community, our Virtual Summits community over there, our Virtual Summits crew, and give you that information. So we'll be doing a 3-part episode. The first episode today, I'm going to talk about the overview of the summit, what was the strategy and the preparation we put into the summit. Part 2, I'll talk about the performance, the engagement, the revenue, and the sales, all of those aspects. And then part 3, we'll go through some of the top takeaways and lessons learned, which is probably some of the most valuable aspects. So buckle in. We're going to have some fun. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm a firm believer in being transparent. Some things we did absolutely crushed it. Some things we did absolutely bombed. And over at Viral Summits Concierge, our agency, we are constantly testing, pushing the envelope, finding the things that don't work so we can double down on the things that do work and then bring that information back to you. So let's jump into it. The first thing here is Summit Talks Summit. So the Summit Talks, the Virtual Summit on Virtual Summit. So we featured over 125 speakers on this summit. Now the concept, the point behind the summit was to show summit hosts how they could run a summit. So there was a couple reasons we wanted to do this summit. One, right now people are flooding in with the ideas, the hopes, and the aspirations to do virtual summits. But unfortunately, they don't really know where to turn or how to get the information or what to do. And if we're being fully transparent, there are some quote-unquote summit coaches out there that are doing a bit of a disservice, teaching some improper, incorrect ways to do summits, and it's impacting all of us. So I thought, why don't we just host the biggest, the baddest, the most impactful virtual summit on Virtual Summits ever hosted and just get that information out there to everyone. Now, the goal behind it, let's look at it from a couple different perspectives. My goal for the summit, right? I always say start with the end in mind. Our end in mind was we were going to go into our high-end product, which was our mastermind, into our lower end, or not even lower end, our secondary product, which is our Summit Genesis Workshop, which is a top-rated 3-day virtual intensive. With that being said, so now the alternative goal, so that was my goal for the summit. The goal that I had overall, like the purpose of the summit, was I wanted to show what virtual summits were. I wanted people to understand how virtual summits work. I wanted them to see, I wanted them to have the tools, the resources, the strategies behind it so that they could set out and start working on their own, essentially having the foundations. The other reason, the big reason, was when I teach, talk, and show summits, whether it's on other people's podcasts, on their summits, back when we were traveling, speaking on stages and things like that, the question would always come up, well, I can see how that works. I can see why a virtual summit would be powerful and impactful for my business, and I can see how you could do it, but I'm not sure if I can do it. Will a summit work for my industry, my vertical, my profession, this, or this?
Virtual Summit's software makes hosting a summit easier than ever. The only software in the world designed specifically for hosting a summit lets you set up a summit in a matter of hours with no tech skill or team needed. You can try out the Virtual Summit's software free at virtualsummits.com. But hurry, this is a limited offer.
So I thought, what if we brought together all of these different summit hosts from every different type of vertical, every different type of industry, every different type of profession, every different type of level of experience, and just walk through their experiences with summits, what it was like for them, what they struggled with, and then what were the benefits of the summit, and let everybody hear directly from the word of mouth of these summit hosts. So that was the ultimate goal with Summit Talks, and we did exactly that. It was a phenomenally successful summit, both from appearance from the performance, the running of it, as well as some of the outcomes of it. Some of the outcomes we did very well, other ones we didn't do so well, but we'll talk about that, the performance and revenue, etc., in part 2. So that was my goal. And I knew if I was going to put this together, I needed to come up with, it couldn't just be 125 of the same type of speakers. Like, it couldn't just be 125 hosts saying the exact same thing, right? Nobody wants to sit through that. So, and I'll go through some of the strategy and prep here in a minute. Let me walk through the timeline of it. So our timeline to build this out, and then I'll go back into the strategy of how I decided to create it. So our timeline was, I came up with the idea about mid-June. I was thinking, what can we do this year to make an impact, to provide for our audience, our community, as well as to help grow our audience, which was our number one goal with our summit. So came up with the idea about mid-June immediately. Like, I jumped right into it. The week after that, I started strategy and outreach. So I put 1 week into strategy, deciding what it would be. Now, when I put my strategy, I create what I call a summit proposal, which is what we also do with our Viral Summits clients in our agency, our Done For You Summits, is this proposal, which is just like all my ideas on one page, the different aspects of it, anything I can think of right then. Now, I like to do a working document, meaning I don't have it completed. Everything's not done, and it's not set in stone. It will evolve as we go and as I get more information, have more ideas. But I have one document where I put all this information, and I think at the end it ended up being like a 50 or 60 page document, right? A Word doc. And it was really long, but it had all the information there, and I continued to fine tune it. I updated it. Maybe I'll just pull it up and kind of walk through everything I put on that summit proposal, because it started off, that first week was what I did. It was brainstorming the summit. So the first thing I started off with was names and titles and taglines, in alignment with where I want to go, right? We always start with the end in mind, understanding the end in mind, where we were wanting to go with that, also the problem that solves. Now I started brainstorming names and titles. I did a summit story arc with ideas. Well, actually, first I came up with the concept, right? So I wrote out a description. I did it pretty in depth. It was 3 or 4 paragraphs of information just talking about what I wanted the summit to do. And that helps me get my information, out of my mind onto a paper so I can then start to fine tune it. Talked about the problem. I did some domain research and looked up domains, determined the platform we were going to use, and I'll talk about that as well. Determined the format. Was this going to be a one-day summit, a micro summit, a multi-day summit, a summit series, summit show, premium summit, or any other type of summit? So obviously we decided to do a summit show, which is over 7 days. So just to remind you, one-day summit is 1 day, micro summit is 2 days, multi-day summit is 3 to 7 days, and then a summit show is more than 7 days, so 8 days or longer. And then a summit series is a series of one-day summits. With that being said, I continue to go through what framework did I want to use, what was my theme, were we going to put anything inside of it, We call it the chocolate and the cone, or the wow factor. What were we going to do? I decided to do talk show style. One of the wow factors I was going to put was into production. We'll talk about that as well. Versus just talking head videos, and then I mapped out, all this I did in that first week. I mapped out my session types, like what sessions do I want? I was going to do Q&A interviews with hosts, hybrid interviews. I wanted panels. I wanted hot seats. I wanted workshop style. I wanted group share. And then I had my summit goal. I wrote down my goal. I had 3 goals from the audience generation, which was our primary goal. Secondary goal was revenue. Then I had 3 goals for those, like minimum, where I'd be happy if we did it, like ideal, and then like shoot for the stars. So my minimal goal was 5,000 leads, 5,000 audience members on the summit. My like ideal goal, the one I really wanted to get, and I thought I could get, was 10,000. And then obviously my like shoot for the moon was 20,000 attendees. Revenue, I wanted it to break even. My main goal was about $50,000 on the summit, and then my high goal was 6 figures on the summit. That's not including post-summit revenue. And we'll again talk about that in the next part 2. So went through summit registration incentives. I talk about and again, I'm just dumping all of this on paper. Like what was the incentive, like what would be beneficial for people to join the summit? Like we always talk about, like your summit, it's great. It needs to be on solve a strong problem, really niche, pull people into it. But you also want to add some benefits, some incentives to this to make people be like, you know what, even if I didn't attend the summit, I'd still opt in because it's got this amazing incentive. We did a virtual summit starter kit, which had a variety of resources on getting started with your summit, which was very popular. Came up with my summit offers. Okay, and again, at the beginning, this evolved as we went, but I wrote something down, so I had something on paper, and again, it evolved. So I went through my one-time offer, I went through my Summit Live offer, and then I went through my post-summit and my final price offer. And then we had 3 tiers. I'm going to talk about the structure of the offer in part 2 when we go over sales and revenue, because we did something we had never done before. So we'll talk about that there, but I wrote down our original tiers and goals or what I was going to have on the offer. And then I kind of jotted down what I wanted to have in the offer. I gave them a name. That name changed over time. I changed what I put in it, but I still had something down. So I went through my top tier, my middle tier, my bottom tier on what I would put in. For example, bottom tier was going to be an all access pass, on-demand videos, MP3 downloads, a ticket to our virtual event revenue class, and then general admission, a ticket to our Summit Fest Live conference. So again, that was there, and then tier 2, tier 3 ended up evolving. I decided on an order bump, on upsells, post-summit offer, and again, these changed, but I had something written down on paper, so I had my strategy and foundation, so I knew, like I got as much out of my head as possible. And then as I'd get more and more ideas, I'd come back to this document. I would update the document where it was at. So if I was changing something with my summit offers, I go back up to the summit offers, and I would either add to it, or I'd cross it out, or I'd change it from there. Went through how I was going to sell my post-summit offer, which evolved. We ended up doing a live workshop, like a webinar, but it was more of a workshop, and then selling on that. I went through engagement strategies. What was I going to do to get people to actually engage? And at the beginning, I just wrote down a bunch of ideas. I wrote down a summit playbook, a virtual swag bag, a scavenger hunt, a quiz, referral incentive, raffle bonuses. And we did 3 or 4 of those. We didn't do all of those. And then I wrote down all the different topics. And this was one of the ones that really evolved. I wrote down what are all the different topics that I think would be valuable for this summit. And I did this also while doing the summit story arc. So when I wrote down the summit story arc, I wrote down the problems, and then I jotted down all of the different topics that I thought would fit that problem. Now, I didn't end up using all those topics, and I ended up crafting things a little bit differently, which I'll talk about here in a moment. So I went through, and then I kind of looked at categories. What different types of categories? And again, I'm going to come back to this because we'll talk about that in the next part here in a moment. So then we went through the format, the daily format. Actually, let's just talk about it right now. So really quickly, the timeline, as I was mentioning, the timeline was, idea was mid-June. right the week after that, I started strategy. I put a week into strategy, and then I put a week into and then I started my outreach. Outreach was about 2 to 3 weeks, but I did primarily most of it in that first week and second week, and I did them in batch. So I would outreach and then wait till I got some more, I would outreach, research, outreach, research, outreach, research. So I'd put 1 to 2 hours every day into each of those. We ended up outreaching to about 100 speakers, and I'll talk about how we did that here in a moment. But we ended up getting over 250 speakers apply to speak on our summit. So that's not common for most people's summit. But I sent out 100 requests, and then I had 250 people end up applying to speak on the summit when we finally cut off the application. So that was primarily because people wanted to be a part of our summits. They also knew that they, would get to see inside of our summit and they could use that information. 2, we had 3, we had really good speaker incentives, which is really important, is other than just giving affiliate commission and the opportunity to build a freebie on their speaker page, what incentives are you giving your speakers? So we had some incredible incentives, which made speakers be like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And then we started outreach. So that went into the beginning of July. So my interviews were July. I did them through July and the beginning of September. I did 5 weeks of interviews. There was 1 week in July I was not available for interviews. So I did 5 weeks of interviews. And my interview, it was crazy. I was doing 3 to 4 days each of those 5 weeks, about 8 to 10 hours a day, back to back, batch recording those interviews to get them all done. Post-production and build-out went through the middle of September. So beginning of September through the middle of September. Once we started with finishing those interviews, those immediately went to video editors. And we'll talk about some lessons learned with that, because that was that came down almost to the wire, those video editings. We started speaker prep and priming the middle and end of September. So I wanted to get so mid of September, we started speaker priming, and then end of September, we did our speaker kickoff event to get them ready for promotion, which started at the very end of September. We did 10 days of promotion, and then the summit dates were September 28th through October 7th, and then our post-summit offer was October 10th through the 15th. So that was the timeline. I did this in just under 4 months, essentially. And it was a total of about 5 months if you consider the dates running and then afterwards. And honestly, I probably would keep it to 4 months, although that was fully jam-packed. I mean, that was the main thing I was focused on for those 4 months. I was not working on anything else. And some things got dropped a little bit, like the podcast. But don't worry, we're back. We got it back. Okay, so that was the timeline. Now I want to go back to talking about some of these strategies and prep aspects. So we're talking about the categories and topics. So when I was thinking about the summit, I'm like, what categories, what things, what topics? And again, I knew my avatar, right? So I started off with who's the avatar. We had the problem, who's the best avatar for this? We actually came up with 4 different avatars, and these evolved as well. But the 4 different avatars were Carrie, the course creator. Let me just go down here. Carrie, the course creator. Okay, so this was somebody who Carrie the creator. So somebody who wanted to sell more of their creatives. So this could be courses, this could be YouTube, this could be Instagram. Like anybody who's creating something that is wanting to sell more of it fell into our creator.
Be sure to check out the speaker management tool inside your Virtual Summit software, which lets you quickly and easily recruit and manage your speakers on your virtual summit, literally eliminating hundreds of hours of work. Get more information at virtualsummits.com.
And then the next avatar was Steve the side hustler. Steve the side hustler was in a job and he had a side hustle. He wanted to take that take that side hustle to full hustle. We had our next avatar was Allie Audience. So Allie Audience has something already. Allie's already successful. She's already got a business going. She just knows if her audience was bigger, her business and her success would be bigger. So she's looking at building her audience. And then the new one we threw in, which was an evolution, is Eric Events. So this is an in-person event host who wants to take some or all of it virtual. So that was our avatars. And so then I had to look at that and go, okay, so what are the categories that would be best to suit these avatars? And that's where we started to come up with what topics we're going to be talking about, what items we're going to be doing. And I ultimately broke it down into a variety of different things. So what I decided on was I was going to have summit hosts who were hybrid style interviews, share their experience, their wisdom, and their strategies, both good and bad successes from their summits. So that way it's real live people giving you their feedback. But I also didn't want 100 something of just back and forth interviews. So what we also did in that was I made it so we did what we call the summit show and tell, where they showed off something behind the scenes of their summit. So that was to break it up a little bit so it was not just interviews. Then I decided to have one category each day of a coaching session, essentially. So summit coach. So I reached out and I got 10 different summit coaches to come on, and they did so the summit hosts were interview style. The summit coaches were hybrid, meaning I brought them on and then they did a presentation. And then if there was any time, we did some Q&A at the end. So each day there was a coaching session. And then I also, because I wanted to be able to make sure we're tapping into some speakers with some audiences that could help generate some traffic as well and provide some additional value outside of, like, again, making it a little bit different. I brought in tactical experts to do presentation based. So I only let one expert per topic in the summit, so that way it wasn't duplicates. I wasn't repetitive, but it was bringing a different aspect on how they could improve their summit. So everything was very much specific to summit. Like it had to, every presentation was based on that. In addition, how did I actually set it up? I set it up 10 days, as I said, and it was a multi-day summit, a summit show, 10 days with those 3 sessions. But also inside of it, I did something kind of different. And again, I'm always trying to test the waters, test the boundaries with my summits. So I decided to, on top of doing a summit, to incorporate a challenge throughout it. So I did a 10-day summit challenge live inside of the summit every day. So I would go live every day at 1 p.m. and do an hour challenge-based framework each day of the summit. And I also wanted to test out, because the ultimate goal, the ultimate test for me, I was testing if we could use a summit to sell a high-end $10,000, $15,000 offer. Traditionally virtual summits are your relationship building strategy. So they bring in a cold audience. You create no like and trust with them. You build that audience, and then you move them into the next phase or next step of their customer journey. We don't normally go into a high ticket offer. So I wanted to test to see if we could do that. And so I also incorporated a live streamed event concept into the summit. So each day of the summit, in the evening, I had a special live streamed event. So I did 3 speaker panels, so live streamed speaker panels. I did 2 live streamed fireside chats. I did a live streamed mastermind session for the VIPs. I did a live stream hot seat. And then I also did, on the opening night and closing night, I did an opening ceremony and a closing ceremony. So essentially a live streamed conference just spread out over 10 days. So I did all of that in this summit. That was my kind of big challenge and test, was to do this massive undertaking, which I would not recommend most of you do, but also to see what of this would work and what of it wouldn't. And we're going to end up going through that in part 2 and 3 of the debrief. So those were the different types and categories. I also broke down the actual speakers, the summit hosts. So again, we had summit hosts, we had summit coaches, we had tactical experts. I also broke those down based on what type of summit it was. So we had 1-day summits, we had micro summits, we had multi-day summits, we had summit shows, we had live streaming summits, we had premium summits, and then we also had some cultural and minority summits represented as well. So each summit host went into one of those categories. So I spread those out as well. So each day you came in, you got to hear from the summit hosts, And those summit hosts were broken down into those categories. So you could decide if you want to go listen to a one-day summit, a micro summit, a multi-day summit, a summit show, a live stream summit, etc. host, and get that information for that day. So here was the cool thing. Even though I knew it was going to be 10 days, I made it so that each day was like a one-day summit. So each day had all of the content you needed for the whole summit. So you could just jump in and get the information in one day and be good, or you could binge out the whole summit if you wanted to. So that was one of the cool aspects to this, is even though it was a 10-day summit, I positioned it so that each day was like a one-day summit. Each day had each of those components built into it, which ended up being extremely powerful and extremely successful. And then, of course, I had my sessions inside of it. We had the live sessions as well. So, so I had the summit proposal. I wrote everything there. It continued to build out. I then, worked on the exact summit agenda, the daily formats, going from my summit story arc into the summit agenda. I wrote out speaker incentives, as I talked about. I created different tiers for the speakers. We had standard, which meant no promotion necessary; featured, which had like 1 or 2 emails promotion; prestige, which had a few emails promoting; and then partner, which was full promotion. And each one of those tiers had more incentives built into it, and a limited number of spots. So I did that to create some scarcity, to make speakers end up competing for those spots, so that if they got the spot, they would actually uphold what they said they would do, which was to promote. Went through the requirements of what that was. I also, on my summit proposal, I just set my batch interview dates. I set those dates, and I only displayed 3 out of the 5 weeks because I wanted to fill up the earlier weeks as much as possible. I didn't open the 4th week until we got closer to that and people needed it. And I didn't open up the 5th week. The 5th week was just for people that had missed, and I really wanted to do them. I call it the overflow week. So I had wrote out my summit calculations on my summit proposal. I then went through my sponsor tiers. I had 4 different tiers, 4 different levels, each one of those with different incentives and different tier points. So for example, just some of the speaker incentives so you understand. I also made the decision to do a leaderboard and speaker awards. Those were some incentives, some bonuses I was going to do during the promotion. But for example, on our partner summit, they got 50%, or if there's partner speakers, if they took, there was only 3 spots available. If they took that, they got 50% commission. They got 2 speaking spots instead of 1. They were featured positioning and placement. They got to do an additional Facebook Live and Q&A to the group. They got to do a list building opportunity on their speaker page. They got to add a bonus to the summit offer. They got to put a flyer in the digital swag bag, and they got to insert in the digital playbook. Then on top of that, I did post-summit deliverables. So they got to do 2 promotional emails. They got to do 2 Facebook Lives to the group. They got a guest spot on my Virtual Summit podcast. They got an introduction. They got a couple of my programs, introduction to virtual events. They got 1 year access to the Virtual Summit software, and they got their session placed on a special podcast episode. So you can see, and that was the top one. So that was massive. That was huge value, and that's why a lot of them wanted to jump in and get that. So sponsors, I did 4 tiers, and this was one of the learning lessons. We'll talk about that, but the sponsors tiers, we have changed how we do this moving forward. But at the time, I set 4 tiers. Low tier at $1,000, top tier at $2,500, then tier 3 at $2,500, tier 2 at $5,000, and tier 3 at $7,500. And then deliverables on those. For example, this is not all of them, but it's some example. They got to do a non-promotional speaking spot on the summit. They got to do a promotional 5-minute video that would be played in the summit. They got to do a list building opportunity on their sponsor page. They got a Facebook Live Q&A with me. They got to add their Facebook pixel to the summit opt-in page. They got a promotional insert. They got to donate something to the summit offer. They got their logo and links throughout. They included a sponsor promotional video, and then they got post-summit deliverables. So they got 3 months of ongoing affiliation with me, where we would continue to affiliate and promote their stuff. They got to do a partner webinar, 1 partner webinar. They got 3 live Q&As in the Facebook group and 3 promotional emails. And so again, that was the highest tier. So just so you've heard some of what we had for our sponsors. Speaker research, I wrote out all the different places that I would start my speaker research. So one, I'm connected already with my podcast, so I've already got a list of summit hosts, but I knew there was a lot more summit hosts I wanted to reach out to. So I went through different summit directories. I went through other summit coaches, students. I went through the different groups and different summit groups. I put out a Facebook ad looking for speakers. Again, I went through my past podcast guests, etc. So I went and looked out, and I reached out and I wrote all of this out originally to get me the idea. And so most of that was the initial stuff I wrote out on that first week, that strategy week. Now, again, it's in much more detail now because I improved it as we went along, but I still wrote out as much as I could that first week. Okay, so that was kind of the strategy. That was the outreach. What we did quickly for speaker outreach and onboarding, I sent a video message to all the people I was connected with. So I sent a personalized video message, about 20 to 30 seconds, to stand out, just inviting them to be a part of this. I had a speaker application form. I used Typeform, and I had a special application, which they had to fill out just to be considered to be on the summit. After they filled that out, they were then approved. If they were approved, they were given a secondary form to fill out all their speaker details. So like their info, their bio, their headshot, their social links, their free gift, all that different stuff, what their topic was going to be about. And then also there was a link at the end of that. Oh, and then they signed the speaker agreement during that and in that. And then they went on to the next page. So this was all like didn't take any of ours because it was a sequence like that just happened. They went from filling that out. If they were approved, they got the automated email, which gave them access to the speaker info form, which was also done on Typeform. Once they filled that out, the next page took them to the interview, to my Calendly page to pick their interview, which was set based on my interview schedule and my batch recording. So that all was pretty seamless. So I do a decent amount of speaker research and prep for my interviews, which is why I needed all of this information. I had specialized stuff in that speaker form that I needed to be able to perform the best interview possible. So I do, that way not every interview is the same. It's high quality, it's good, it's powerful, etc. So those were the speaker outreach and onboarding. One of the big things, though, in the speaker application form, I asked 2 questions, which were very powerful. One, would you be interested in being a sponsor? So we got some sponsor requests just out of people signing up to be a speaker. 2 is I asked, do you know anyone else who would be a good fit for this summit? That is how we went from about 100 people that we reached out to over 250 people, because those people we had at least half, probably more than half. I think we had about 70% put somebody's name down and their contact information that would be good. And then, of course, we had people sharing it.
With the Ever Summit feature inside the Virtual Summit software, you can rerun your summit as if it were live, ongoing forever with one click of a button. This now lets you continue to use your summit forever, bringing in qualified and engaged leads every month into your business. Get more information at virtualsummit.com.
So some points of interest, and then we'll wrap this episode up. Some points of interest from this, from the preparation aspect, which is like what we prepared, the interview aspect, etc., is one, understanding batch recording is super important. Do those interviews back to back. If you have a lot of interviews and you're spreading those out, it's going to tax you emotionally and energetically. So make sure you have those together. Make sure you set your time on your interviews. So like I did a 30-minute interview. I had an hour time blocked for each person. That gave me time to do my pre-interview chat, do the interview with them, stop at the appropriate time. I did a super summary and a promotional clip right after, and that left me a few moments to do my post-interview chat. All of that within an hour. I don't think I was ever late on my time with my interviews, and I was doing, like I said, 8 to 10 hours of interviews back to back to back to back. Perfect intro is so important. I can't tell you how many compliments that I got from our speakers, which made them want to promote even more because I made them sound amazing with a perfect intro. So a perfect intro is one of the strategies we teach when you are doing your interviews on your summits. You need to have an impactful, professional, and powerful interview. So if you want more information on that, you can go over to our resources area at virtualsummits.com. We have some free training over there about the perfect intro and how to set that up. So that was really powerful. Pre-interview chat, make sure you have a checklist of notes and things you're going to do so that you don't forget. Again, like I did 120 something interviews, I still use that checklist for every single interview, and it's important to get into a flow, to have a rhythm. Otherwise, you'll miss something. Otherwise, you'll forget something. The couple other just tidbits from interviewing is you got to think about your body and your voice. You got to take care of yourself if you're going to be doing a lot of interviews. You've got to hydrate, stay away from alcohol. So, for example, I stayed away from alcohol during that. No wine, no beer, no anything at night. I got as much sleep as I could so that my voice could recover. I switched from coffee to tea. The caffeine in the coffee tends to make me go hoarse quicker if I'm doing lots and lots of talking. And so my voice it is something I have to worry about. If I'm doing, 8 to 10 hours of talking in interviews, my voice will go hoarse. So I had to think about that. So giving myself enough time to rest in the evenings, switching from tea, having some healthy options, taking care of myself, all of those things are super important when you're going through the interview process. And also giving yourself time to rest and recover after, like at the end of the week. I would get during this prep period, this was in the middle of the summer, so I would go camping. Every Friday after I got done with my last interview, we went camping for 24 hours to just get away and detox and be in the wilderness. You do whatever you need to, but these are things you should be thinking about. If the speakers are late, your sessions are just shorter. You just tell this, do not jeopardize going late into another speaker's interview because one speaker showed up late. That is on them. That is their bad. And so their session will be shorter. And if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. If it's a 10-minute interview, it's a 10-minute interview. That's on them. But don't let that, you got to stay fast and you got to let them know that and hold your ground because it's not fair to the next speaker. So these are just a couple interview tips from my prep strategy in the interview aspect. Also, remember the importance of follow-up with your speakers. We followed up. We have a follow-up sequence. And I've done an episode already, a few episodes back specifically on some of these topics. I went way more in depth, so you can look at that. But the importance of a follow-up. We followed up with each speaker the day of saying thank you. We followed up 3 days after saying, hey, I just wanted you to know I was going back through your interview and it was amazing. Thank you. We followed up a few weeks after that just saying to get any information we needed. We followed a few weeks after that to say, hey, just wanted to let you know we're thinking about you. Is there anything you need from us? Anything we can do to help you? Just staying top of mind with them. That it makes a big, big, big difference when you're doing your summit. So, okay. That was part 1 here on the Summit Talks debrief. So I wanted to cover the overview of the summit, the strategy of the summit, and some of the prep of the summit. So we'll wrap that up of part 1 with the Summit Talks debrief. Next part 2, we're going to be talking about the performance, engagement, revenue, and sales. Part 3, we'll be talking about the takeaways and lessons learned. So stay tuned. Enjoy, buckle up. If you haven't already, check out our resources area over at virtualsummits.com. You can check out a lot of free resources on getting started with your interviews, your summit build out, this one-day summit strategy. And don't forget to check out our Summit Genesis workshop, our 3-day virtual intensive, where I take you from idea to summit promo in 3 days virtually and get you ready to rock. So check that out over there. And just remember, your message matters. And one of the most powerful ways to get that message out to the world is with a virtual summit. So check out the show notes, go check out those resources, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on the Virtual Summit podcast. Head over to the show notes to check out all the links and resources from this episode, and be sure to grab your free trial of the Virtual Summit software.
Now, I want to end this episode by saying to all the Summit hosts listening right now, I believe in you, and you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful ways to quickly grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and most importantly, make an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, because the world needs to hear your message, and there are people who are waiting for you to help them. So just get started, because imperfect action is always better than no action. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.